The Immortal John Hancock here, and today I'm going to be talking about some bad games that I still like to play. You know what? And today's theme is Super Nintendo. I did a video like this for the NES, and for the Super Nintendo, I picked five. Five games that I know are bad games, but I still like to go back and play from time to time. These aren't good games, but these are games that I can forego their terrible mistakes and still appreciate what they still have to offer. So sit back, relax. Here we go. Hardly anybody remembers playing Qbert III, and that's because the original is way better. And at the time, every franchise needed to have like a Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis edition. And the controls, first and foremost, are a little confusing. I take an alternative control, makes the game much more playable. And let's talk about that sound. The sound in this game is not great at all. It's very forgettable. It's a little slow. In fact, I think the Atari 2600 version of Qbert is my favorite version, even though it doesn't look great. It's super fast. This is just a slow-moving Qbert. It has colorful graphics, well animated, has all the enemies, bells and whistles that are reminiscent of the arcade, but the arcade's not here. Nope. These are custom levels. There's 20 plus levels, and you have some bizarre backgrounds when you check this out. It just isn't as fun as the original, but I enjoy Qbert games. I enjoy Qbert games more than most. I even enjoy the forgotten sequel, Qbert's Cubes. But you know what? For a Super Nintendo game, it's not terrible. It's not the arcade. I wish the arcade version was offered on this cartridge. It's not. You play weird levels like this. You're jumping around, I do believe, on teeth. It has many shortcomings, but I still keep going back to it from time to time. Vortex is the Super FX game that's often overlooked and forgotten about for various reasons. As you know, a good Super FX game is Star Fox. The problem with Vortex is the very first level. And it should be a cool game. You're a robot transforming into different modes, blowing up enemies. It is slow, like other Super FX games. But you know what? You take out that first level, which I hate, and you can put in a code, and I'm going to show you the code. You can enjoy this game more. And it's not a great game. It's got some, challenge ramps up pretty fast in it. It's got some issues with just kind of being a little on the boring side. But you put this code in, and you can forget that first level. And I think the game becomes more enjoyable. I can't think of a game with such a boring first level than Vortex. It really just turned off a lot of people. I know it did for me until I found out this code. And then you can just level select and play the other levels, which I think are better. Having terrain and being on foot, I think, adds a dimension to this game. And it's not a great game, but it was really cool to see the Super FX chip really pushing the capabilities of a Super Nintendo. And I don't mind going back and playing this. I'm a fan of games like Cybermorph on the Atari Jaguar, and it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. So check this one out if you're into these early 3D polygon games. Calibre 2097 has some aspects of some other great games of the day. Strider comes to mind, but it falls short. It's a little too slow. It's got some cool moves. It's definitely a side-scrolling hack and slash game with an interesting premise. I want to like this game more than the substance of the game, if that makes sense. Based, I do believe, on a video game franchise in Japan, Sword Maniac, much better name. But you know what, going back to this game, I try to enjoy and appreciate this game. The gameplay isn't great. There are some clunky mechanics. The hit detection so-so as you progress into the game. Another game that that first level. The first level's okay, and then you get to the end boss, who you just have to pick away at its health bar. And I think it's just another example that you take away that first level, and I think people would appreciate, or at least that first boss, people would appreciate this game a whole lot more. You get some health icons, Coca-Cola can, of course. That's kind of funny. Every game in the 80s had a Coca-Cola can energy bar. Anyways, here is the first boss, called Tattoo, and fairly challenging. but if you can forego the shortcomings of this game, underneath it all, it's an okay game, at least for me. This next one, The Adventures of Dr. Franken, is yet another platform for the Super Nintendo. I think that was a problem with this one, as there was an abundance of this genre on the Super Nintendo, and frankly, there was other ones that were much better. This does have very, very nice visuals, but that gameplay, and you know, you play a Frankenstein, you have some special moves, but your goal is to go around the level in a non-linear fashion and find 4 items. I do believe part of a passport for your girlfriend. I do believe something stupid like that. Story's kind of lame. The attack and hit detection with enemies can be troublesome, as you have to hit them just right. You do have a fairly long health bar, but hits take off several bars, so it kind of defeats the purpose of having a long health bar or energy bar or whatever, battery life. Anyways, I do still enjoy going back and playing this one. I do think it has very nice visuals and an interesting premise. Not the greatest platformer, but one that I find unique. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Little Nemo a little bit. And I do recommend going back to this if you haven't played it. Next up is Battle Blaze, and this is a fighting game. I'm a big fan of movies such as Conan the Barbarian, these medieval fighting games. And, you know, this one kind of got sneezed out. Everybody was making a fighting game back then. The problem with Battle Blaze is it gets boring rather quickly. There are some special moves. You can jump around. There's 2 different modes in it. But I do like the graphics. I do like fighting games such as this. And don't get me wrong, this is still a bad game. And back in the day, I have a connection of renting this when other fighting titles weren't available. And I'm sure many people will have common stories such as that, where you check out a game only because other games weren't available. But have you played any of these? Definitely in the comments below. I want you to tell me, as I want your thoughts on the games that I chose. So, of the 5 picks, do you agree with any of these? What are some other games that are bad games or below average games that you still like to go back and revisit for the Super Nintendo? You know, for me, my experience with these goes back to my childhood. Some of these games were available to rent, as some of the more popular games were taken for the night. And so it kind of forced me to decide whether A, I don't rent a game at all, or B, choose a game that I know is mediocre, it doesn't look great, and appreciate it for what it is. So I want to thank my childhood for appreciating some of these, as, you know what, you know, when you have one game to play and you have one game to play all night, either not playing a game or the game, some of the games that I showed, that's why I picked them. Thank you so much. If you like what you see, consider hitting that like and subscribe button and clicking the bell as I'm uploading videos every week. You folks are wonderful and beautiful. Let's keep it positive. This is the Immortal John Hancock, and you take care.